Loud and clear.
All right, super. I will first start by saying my butt hit my chair about 15 seconds ago because although I'm a creature of habit and a 2 cup of coffee a day person, today is a 3 cup of coffee day. So I just got back and I'm pleased to be here and talking to you today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. There's a slide deck, which I'm sure that's why everybody wanted to join. But let's talk a little bit here. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Tony Keller, and I'm a VP of Product Management and Reliability here at FileWave. What that really means is it's my job to be hypercritical of everything we do from a QA perspective, a support perspective, a professional services perspective, and especially from a product perspective. It's also my role to never be satisfied and to try to, to always move us somewhere forward and better, and to expect more. And that's the thing that, that we're working on trying to do. I'm here today. We're going to talk about a few things. We're going to talk about 14.6 overview and features. We're just getting ready to enter our beta phase with 14.6, probably today or tomorrow. So we'll be starting that and then a release within 2 weeks, we expect. We're going to talk about what's coming next a little bit. We'll spend a few minutes at the end of the session talking about 14.7. I do want to mention, at least right here, that we're hiring kind of like mad, as Tobias and Vasily mentioned before. We're changing and growing, and as an organization, in numbers, in construct of the organization, it's been really nice to see folks be promoted into some roles and taking over more leadership roles, especially some of the younger people on the team that are taking leadership roles now and trying to help define and grow the product. But that growth's been painful, not so much from a organizational perspective, but getting people has been hard. So when you're on your way to work, if you see that guy standing by the highway holding the cardboard side, you might want to ask him, is he a C++ developer or a React developer? Because we'd sure like to know, because we're looking for people, because we can only do what we can do with the people that we have. So we're always looking to grow on that front. And then lastly, I'm going to mention a service decommission. Doesn't hit very many folks, but a couple of dozen customers. I want to mention that at the end. So somebody please remind me to talk about Clever a little bit. All right. So let's jump right in and talk about version 14.6. So 14.6 is kind of focused on two things. One is the Apple fall release. What is part one of the Apple fall release? The second part will land in 14.7. So the first part is the Apple fall release, and then the second part, the big part, is Teamviewer. So we're going to cover both of these and some other stuff in the middle. So the first thing, kind of always with the Apple releases, is we've got support for new hardware, operating system, and the profile changes. So DEP profiles, configuration profiles, Monterey, iOS 15, tvOS 15 are all supported in 14.6. We've got significant updates to Apple's Mdm software updates. This has been a real pain point for us. One with previous changes in the Mdm protocols, or the way software updates in general were working with Big Sur, and then also with the kind of changes in the way that we were doing Apple Mdm software updates. So we're now sorry, was there a question? Okay. We're now making more efficient use of the scheduled OS update command, where before we kind of sent the command in kind of its default configuration to ask the device to do an update, and it kind of handled it on its own. We're now making better use of it as the Apple documentation got better and our understanding of it got better, pretty much in equal measure. So we now send a schedule OS update command to a device telling it to download. And then we send repeated OS update status commands to that same device, which query the download status of that particular update on that device. From that, we know when it's done. And then when we know when the download's done, then we can do another schedule OS update command, this time telling it to install that update. The result of that is that we end up with a more timely installation, better status reporting of where that install is, and some preparation work for us to be able to do more behavioral controls in future with this. So this is part one of the Mdm software updates. We've got a second part that we hope to have in 14.7, but it's kind of a significant change. The second thing that we've got is, although we internally, and I think most folks that work with Apple, considered Vpp 2 to be the change from user-assigned licenses to device-assigned licenses, there actually is a Vpp 2 now. So there's an updated API from Apple to support Vpp. Now, this is a very background thing, so there's nothing for me to really show with this, but we can talk about it. So the old API and process for Vpp was that FileWave would submit a Vpp request. So let's say you assign an application to 1,000 devices. We would submit a Vpp request to Apple saying, these 1,000 devices get a license for this particular app. And then we would wait a bit before we attempted to install that app on those 1,000 devices. The default window for that is a 3-minute default. We would wait 3 minutes before we attempted to install. But that's kind of guesswork. We're just hoping that everything worked in that time period. And then we would need to continually pull, because of this structure, we had to also continually pull Apple Vpp services to find out if they're new licenses. So any of you who've managed Apple for a while know that the Vpp syncs happen every 5 minutes. So when you buy new licenses, they'll show up after a bit, but we have to do that polling all the time with the older API. In the new API, FileWave submits a Vpp request, and then we'll get notification back from Apple about the completion of that request. So it's still asynchronous, but we actually get an answer that says, hey, this thing is done that you asked for, it's complete. That's really meaningful because that notification we can use, as you'll see here in a second. We also have notification of Vpp license changes directly. So when you go into ASM or you go into ABM and you buy something new, there's immediately, or well, semi-immediately, going to be a notification that's sent to FileWave about that change in license or that new purchase. So we'll get notification, which reduces the need to sync so much. So the impact of this new API is kind of being implemented in 2 phases, but the impact of this eventually is faster app deployment based on the timeliness of the license assignment. So we were waiting 3 minutes before, but if it only takes 15 seconds for the license assignment to be done, and Apple tells us that, well, then obviously we can go ahead with the install command much faster than we were able to do before. We also are going to have to run fewer synchronizations to ascertain the status of the licenses from the Apple side. We don't have to do that so much. And it allows for more actions to be requested in a singular request, this new API. So although we could kind of batch things up before, we can now send a request to do a lot more things at the same time. For instance, multiple applications with that 1,000 endpoint devices instead of individual requests. So overall, this will lead to a reduction in the kind of the busyness of the server services for Vpp, and in general, lighten the load on the FileWave services. So really good changes from Apple, and hopefully our implementation of it is really good as well. We are calling this a technical preview in this iteration because it's a brand new service, and we didn't want to put all our eggs in one basket here. So it's disabled by default. We'll still use the old API. So when you upgrade to 14.6, it's going to use the API by default, but you can put in a support ticket and they'll help you turn it on to try this new method. The implementation in 14.7 is exactly the same. So we didn't reduce syncing or anything like that because we want to see that the service proves itself, that it's reliable, it's functioning just how it should. And that second batch of changes to reduce those synchronizations and reduce that server load will be in the next iteration. But the API is totally there and able to be used. Okay, got a couple of additional Apple changes here. One, and this is a nice little kind of a sleeper function that I think will make some folks happy. At least I hope it's going to make some folks happy. I'm going to go show you this one real quick. This one is handled only in the web admin, and we're going to talk a little bit about the web admin later and kind of philosophy and such, because I think it's important. But we're going to log into my admin here real quick. Okay, so in the sources area in this Apple section, you'll notice there's a new setting here that's called Vpp Update Settings. And if we mouse over this, it tells us that it's for automatically downloading and installing updates. Okay, for those who don't know, when a Vpp app changes, something changes from the iTunes Store, an app updates for instance, a developer updates their application, metadata is picked up by that VPP sync that happens every 5 minutes, and it sends, basically we get a notification, there's a new app. What happens immediately on the FileWave side is we immediately then send out an install application command to every device that's got that application assigned. There can be some negative consequences to that because, of course, you're creating load on your network and on your devices, and maybe you don't want that to happen all the time. So now you've got a couple of options here for these Vpp update settings, and again, it defaults to always. I don't think that page, let me shift refresh that. When I switch between versions, it looks a full refresh. When you look at that, you see there are 3 options here. There's always, which is the default, so it behaves just as it's always done. There's never, which is I don't want it to update VPP apps at all, right? You're probably not going to choose that. But then we've got a third option here, which is scheduled. Now, for those of you who looked at our software update changes last time, you notice that we added some options to be able to control when software updates went to devices. This is the same mechanism, and eventually this will be more granular. But right now, we can set it so that VPP updates going to devices will, for instance, only happen on weekends or only happen during non-business hours and weekends that are defined right now as, well, I don't think that's right, 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. I imagine it's the other way around. That's, okay, I understand. From 6 p.m. till 8 a.m. they can update, right? So that's not the definition of business hours. But we could switch it to be in that time, right? So that will then lock that down so it's not happening during the business day. So I think that's a really nice feature add. Okay. What else do we have here? So let's talk about the kiosk. So many of you probably use the web clip version of the FileWave kiosk. Some of you used the IPA version of the kiosk, and as serendipity would have it, iOS 15 totally broke our IPA kiosk that had been needing some attention for quite some time. And because we were doing the Teamviewer integration and we needed a way to send push notifications to devices to start a TeamViewer session, we have totally built, and I say we, wasn't actually me, it's the development team has built a new FileWave Kiosk IPA that is very close to completion, not quite done, but close. And my guess is many of you will move to this to be able to support the TeamViewer. So this gives the ability to do push notifications for TeamViewer, but also better behavior, and especially on iOS 15 where it was totally broken, better behavior means it will actually work. But what I do mean by better behavior is less battery consumption and a little more smart utilization of network resources. Okay, so I'm going to take a quick break right there and say, PN, is there anything that you'd, for those of you who don't know PN, he's the product owner for our Apple and Core products. PN, is there anything you'd like to add or comment on the Apple side of things?
Hey, good morning, good afternoon. So yeah, I'm product owner for everything Apple, everything Core, everything Google at FileWave. Nice to see some names I've seen over the last years, and I really hope that in the near future we'll be able to meet again really live. I'm seeing a lot of questions about VPP on Mac. I will try to answer them there, but yeah, definitely the Ask Me Anything session just after is the right time to have these questions being discussed. Yeah, no, I think you covered most of the Apple thingy. For the new Vpp API, yeah, we really want to be very safe there because we know that if there is anything wrong there, the whole deployment fails. So this is why we're getting baby steps. First steps, we just replace the old API with the new one, but without changing too much, just making sure that it works. And once this one will work, we are sure that it works perfectly. Then we move to the better approach for this new API. So that's what we plan. Right. And yeah, 14.7 will bring the other features we were not able to put in 14.6, but we didn't want to wait too long before we give you already the ones we've made in 14.6.
All right, thank you, Pian. So let's shift gears a little bit. We're going to talk about a couple of things with the web admin, some specific changes in the web admin. But the first thing I want to mention is just our goal here. The goal may have been a little muddled. You may be a little confused about what we're doing, and we've said things that contradicted ourselves over the past few years. But what we've adapted to is understanding, as we've been trying to move to a web admin, that there's simply some things a web admin's not going to be empowered to do. Faucet Magic is a perfect example of something that's just much better if it's a native application. So we're really looking at focusing on both solutions at the same time, where the native admin is our kind of our power tool, and the web admin is the more elegant tool. And most features will be in that elegant tool, but some of the power tools will be in the native side. And we are working on trying to merge as many elements as possible so that we get some of the web admin behavior in the native admin. That's kind of going on behind the scenes, and is some of the work that Vasily was mentioning before, as far as fixing some of the underpinnings. But that's the general goal here. But we do have a couple of things in the web admin that are specific. We already talked about that Vpp update control. But we have, based on all of your feedback, especially I think in the last session that we did, there was a lot of requests for having Google as an IDP source as well. So we've added Google as an IDP source for device enrollment and for FileWave authentication. So that's in as well. And we've also added the ability to use IDP groups for smart groups and deployments. I'm just going to show you that real quick. So if we hop back into our admin and go into, say, deployments, you'll know, oh, I'm in the wrong server. I need to come over here to Josh's server. If we log in here and take a look at deployments, we can do a new deployment, and you'll notice there's an option here when we select who we want to deploy to, that there's an option for IDP groups, and these are the groups that are coming, in this case, from Google, right? So there's an automation group, there's a QA group, for instance, so we could pick the QA group. Okay. While we're here, I'm going to talk about the next item that was on that particular slide, which is the concept of these deployments. If anybody's worked with these deployments, you notice that you can kind of go in and do stuff. Like I could select devices that I want, select groups and such. So I've got the QA group here, and I can pick a payload. I'll just pick some random payload here. And if I wanted to deploy this, I could go ahead and say next, 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 and save it all up and all that stuff. But what could happen in the web admin is, as we're working with this, when we click on something like devices, that would navigate us away from that deployment, and we would lose it. So then you have to rebuild the whole thing when you come back to it, which is obviously not terrific. So there's now the concept of deployment drafts. So when we go back to deployments now, we'll see that there's this draft that allows us to pick up from where we were. So we can click on that and then hop right back into where we were. So we've got our payload and our target both in there. Okay, so small adjustment on the website, but an important one for us. The Google IDP thing, that was hopefully pretty big. Right. What else do we have in the web admin? Well, let's take a look. Right. We got the deployment drafts we talked about, and this one as well is a kind of a sleeper. It's kind of a small function, but it's the ability to do scripts. First of all, in the web admin, you can get to the scripts, but two, if we take a look at any particular payload, right, you'll see that I've now got the ability. If we edit this guy real quick, you'll see that the scripts tab has been added here. And when we click on that, we've got the ability to see those 7 different script types that we can do here, right? So we can add a script to this. So activation script, this is just like in native. We can add that script and then give it a name. So let's say in this case, I'm going to call this some kind of logon thing, and we'll make it a PowerShell, right? So it's PS1. And this is the part that I like so much, is that I can take my script, however simple or complicated it is, and paste it in. And now we've got really a nice GUI for the script. So color coding for the script, you can read it, it's more readable and certainly better looking than what we have as a script editor in the native product. Now, I will caution you though, that just because it's a good looking editor doesn't mean that you really want to do mass editing here, because these changes would actually impact, of course, the payload or the file set that you've got. So you want to make sure and test these things before you deploy them. But it's a much better looking editor, and it does give you a preview here of what's in the script, which I like as well, because the way it works in native is you have to actually open it to see what's in it. So this is where we can kind of leverage some of the things that the web does better than native, and really helps us out quite a bit. So I really like that feature, and find that it's now something of a joy to go in and edit that script, because I'm so used to looking at the other interface. All right. So one final thing that I'll mention, this is kind of this isn't in the web, this is in native, but it's a big change. We've had some customers that have run into this, so I'm going to show you this one real quick. It has to do with imaging on the Windows side of things. So particularly those who have been managing Dell devices, Dell has this concept of a pass-through MAC adapter, which is not a real MAC address, it's a fake one, but it allows you to use the fake one rather than a dongle address. So you don't have a bunch of devices that are all assigned to the same dongle address. You can use this pass-through MAC address. The problem with that MAC address is it's not real. So when we look at a device like this Foundry One device, and we look at the serial MAC, we get all the MAC addresses for all the different network adapters that are on this device. The problem was that we could enter one manually, a MAC address, for that virtual MAC, but it doesn't really come from inventory. So what would happen is as soon as the next time the Foundry One here sent its inventory in, it was going to overwrite whatever value we put in, which basically invalidated the virtual MAC address. So what's been added is a new field. So if we go over to the imaging view here and take a look at that same device, you see there's a new field called the imaging MAC address, and you can see I've put a value in there. You can manually type that in there. This value will not be overwritten by anything. It's only ever what you put in there, and you can mass populate this from the import in the web admin. So you can import and put MAC addresses from a CSV, etc., for all of the devices. What it does is it combines this with the actual MAC addresses when it sends the data over to the IBS. So your virtual MAC adapter address will always be there. And I know some of our friends in Georgia will be happy about that particular change. Okay. So I know there's a lot of content, so we're kind of going a little bit quickly, but not hopefully too fast. So let's talk about the second big piece, which is the Teamviewer integration. So Teamviewer, we're calling this also a technical preview. This is part one of 2 parts of the implementation. This implementation is attended access to devices. So meaning just like with Observe Client, where you can have it prompt the user or not prompt the user, in this case, this will be prompting the user to allow the remote session to those devices. It is cross-platform with some dependencies. We're going to talk about what the prerequisites are for each of the device types and what can be done with them, because it's a little bit different for each. There will be, in the technical preview, 2 licenses available for you to use while we're in 14.6. So there'll be 2 licenses, and you do have to assign a license to a user to be able to use it. This is a licensed partnership with Teamviewer, so it is not free. Couple of questions that I suspect folks will have, and we can talk more in the AMA session later too. But a couple of them, yes, this will replace Observe Client completely in version 14.7. That's our target for this. But in 14.6, Observe Client is still in the product with the same functionality. And so, yes, Observe Client is in 14.6. We're calling that it's in maintenance mode. Now, we really don't mean that the way we notify the device is in maintenance mode. That's called a solution called ZeroMQ that we're actually leveraging for Mac and Windows for Teamviewer as well, while we work on a more permanent kind of long-term solution. That's one of the things that Vasily was talking about before, is we're looking at a different technology to do that we think might perform a little better. But that ZeroMQ notification technology, that'll still be maintained, but we're not going to make any changes to Observe Client anymore. So anything that's in that third-party integration will stay the same. The main benefit of this integration, in case you're wondering, what does this do? How does it make it easier? It allows you to set up sessions from the admin with no kind of passcode sharing or anything. If you use Teamviewer, you don't have to do any of that stuff. And of course, it gives us all the multi-platform support. So we're going to take a look at each of those here in turn in a little bit. And yes, there will be a licensing cost for this, but it's quite a reasonable one, and some more details will be coming on that soon. Those licenses do get fed down to the your FileWave server through our key server, so that's administered centrally and then comes down to the server. So the demonstrations we're going to take a look at, and then we're just going to kind of hop out of our presentation and look at them, is we're going to look at what it takes to set up the licenses, how we manage macOS, Windows, Android. I guess this is in the way. Chrome and iPad, and what we can do with each of those platforms. So let me hop out of here. And I'm not dumb enough to kind of set up demos or to do live demos for this because it's too many pieces to set up at the same time. So I've got videos recorded for this, and we're just going to jump right in here with a Mac OS session. So in this case, I need to shut down the volume here. In this case, we've got a Mac that we're remoted into here, right? So we're doing a mirror in this case of this device over here. And we're going to go ahead and, sorry, one second. We've got the Mac here, and we're going to start a session to it. We're going to start it in the native admin in this case, but there are some prerequisites that we have, right? So we're going to talk about those. But first thing we need to do is assign licenses. Now, what you're going to see here in Manage Administrators in this view is a new tab called Teamviewer. Next release, we're going to move this down here as a button because it would fit better as a button. But basically, you have to assign who can use Teamviewer. So in this case, Tony K and Mateo are both set to be able to use Teamviewer. So you must do this. It is limited contractually to the number of times that can change. So you have to be very careful when you assign the licenses. So that's one thing that we'll have with this, right? But once we have the licenses set, we can go ahead and work, let me get to the right place, to do a remote session with our Mac. So we want to go to this Mac. What do we have to do? Well, we have to have the FileWave client at version 14.6, right? So in this case, that's already deployed to this particular device. And we'll want, in most cases, probably to pre-deploy the Teamviewer application just so the user doesn't have to deal with the install. Now, there is a prompt to allow you to do kind of a run once version. But of course, this is also a screen viewing technology, so it's going to prompt the user to allow the screen to be seen, et cetera, et cetera. So we provided a TCC profile for you that you can deploy very much like what you have to do with Observe Client to make this work. So those two pieces pre-deployed, probably pretty helpful in your environment, and that's in the knowledge base article that we have here. So those samples are here for you. And I will say that we thought about including some of these things, but really when we started looking at the complexity of doing that and the number of assumptions that would have to be made, we kind of erred on the side of letting you control how you want it to behave, but we're open for suggestions on that. So if you have ideas as it goes forward. Okay. So how does it actually work? We've got the endpoint with all the prereqs here. We want to start a remote session. How do we do it? We can do that from either the native admin or from the web admin. In this case, I think we're going to do that from the native admin. All right, so we'll go find the machine, and there's going to be, if it satisfies the prerequisites, when you right-click on it, you're going to see there's a new option for Open Remote Session. When you do that, what happens behind the scenes here is that on the admin machine, a browser tab is open that goes to get.teamviewer.com with a particular session ID. Okay, this will be handled. You'll see that it's going to prompt me to launch Teamviewer, very much the way RingCentral did if you clicked on your link to do this meeting, right? Same thing. We'll look at some more deep linking later. And then what's happening at this point is Teamviewer has launched this session and it's waiting on the remote endpoint to answer, right? So the first half of the equation is done on the admin side. Let's watch what happens as we continue here. On the client side, it also got a prompt. And you'll notice that that prompt is two parts. It says, do you want to launch the installed Teamviewer, the one that's already here, or do you want to download the single-use Teamviewer? Now, of course, we could remember this selection and not get prompted for this again, but I left it here so that we all could see it. Right? So in this case, we'll go ahead and launch the installed Teamviewer. Eventually, I'll click on that. There we go. Okay, it will prompt, again, you can save this, but I'm going to open Teamviewer here. These two will hook up, and you see that it's now prompting the user saying, Tony K would like to view and control your desktop. Would you like to allow that? We'll click allow, and now we're in a full-blown Teamviewer session. I'll minimize this window and get it out of the way here so that you can see. But this is our Teamviewer session here, and it's full-blown Teamviewer. So it's not limited. You've got your text chat, your video chat, your audio chat, your whiteboard, your clipboard, your file transfers, all of those things are available. So well beyond what we can do with Observe Client. So that's the Mac in a nutshell. Let's go take a look at doing the same on the Windows side. Very similar, but not identical. So looking here on the Windows side, right? Again, we've got a remote. I've got my talkingness here. So we've got our Windows machine. What do we need for prerequisites for that? Again, the client has to be version 14.6. And we need the Teamviewer application in the same way as on the Mac side to avoid administrator need, etc. But if you don't want to expose that endpoint, right? If you don't want to have Teamviewer on the machine all the time, you could have folks do the, the single-use launch, especially for at least for an intended session. One thing I'll mention here is that the installer for Teamviewer is a setup.exe type of installer, not an MSI. So we did go ahead and provide an example file set / payload for you here so that you can see how to build it with a launch argument, but you're probably going to want to build your own so that you're grabbing the most recent version of Teamviewer. This one is recent. In fact, it's probably up to date, but it won't be up to date for long. So you probably want to do your own for that. Okay. But once we have those two things in place, and in this case we already do, the client's at 14.6 and the Teamviewer install has been already run. So the device is all good to go. So this time we're going to go ahead and create the session from the web admin. So we can go to the individual device. We've got our device here in this RDP session. Or this might even be, I might have been using Observe Client here, right? So in the web admin, all we do is go to that machine, and either from the full devices view, we can click on the actions menu and then choose to open a remote session, or we can go into the detail view for that device and do the same thing. So from the action menu at the top here for Foundry 1, we can click on it and say open the remote session. And the same exact behavior from that. A browser tab is going to open on our admin machine. You may notice in the background that the same is happening on the client machine. We're prompted to launch Teamviewer in the same way. So over here, our admin session is waiting for the client device. On the client device, it prompted about letting the browser open Teamviewer, and now it's prompting the user. And again, this could be accepted, ahead of time, but in this case, I let the prompt stay. We'll say to go ahead and open Teamviewer, and we're going to end up with the same thing that we just had on the Mac side. Right? Again, fully fledged Teamviewer with all the capabilities in it. So not limited. It again prompts to allow it. And I will mention on this prompt that is also recorded in the audit log. If any of you are concerned about that, it's recorded the same as a Observe Client session would be. That it says that Tony K attempted to talk to blah 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 at whatever time. Okay, so there's our remote session now, again, with the chats and the actions and all the things that we can do on the Windows side. So those two are good. They're a step up in functionality of what things we can do, but I'm particularly happy to see these other three, because the other three, we don't have a solution for today. So the solution for Mac and Windows is better, but for Android, Chrome, and iPad, it's non-existent. So we're really looking at some new stuff here. So let's look at Android, and we'll go ahead and take a look. Again, there are prerequisites for these. The prerequisites are a little different for Android. First of all, just by having an Android device, so here I'm casting this Android device to my screen here, you have to have the Android EMM companion app deployed, but you already will have done that if you've got the device's EMM enrolled. It's automatic, but I mention it because this the changes that we put into the companion app, let me pause this for a second, the changes that we put into the companion app to support the notification. So with Mac and Windows, that notification goes through 0MQ. Here for Android, the notification is going to the EMM companion app that we want to start a session, right? So that's going through a new service that we have at FileWave, a new web service. So that request has to be honored by the device, which means that the device has to have an updated version of the EMM companion app, and that companion app has to be approved by Google. So all of the work is done. It has been submitted to the Play Store, but it's not been accepted yet. So we're waiting on that acceptance. Once that's in place, you'll be able to test this as well. We need that, the companion app, and then we also need the Teamviewer Quick Support app. That Quick Support app is the tool that's on the remote endpoint that allows the session to start. So if we look on the remote device, that's our EMM app. But when we look in the applications view here, you'll see that we've got that quick support app installed. That's the thing that allows the admin to see the remote screen. The next prerequisite is the thing that allows you to actually click on it, which is to use the keyboard or to navigate around on that device with your mouse. That's the Teamviewer Add-On. Both of these come from the Google Play Store. The add-on is a little bit complicated though, because it is device specific. There is a universal add-on, but we didn't find in our testing that it worked very well. The ones that worked best were the specific ones. So I've got kind of an example in the knowledge base of how you might deploy that, how best to deploy it. And Teamviewer kind of helps you by letting you cheat. And if you do it manually, it tells you, what version you should use. But those three pieces are what we most require. If you're not doing actual control of that device, if you just want to see it, then you can just do the quick support app. But on the Android device, then we can go ahead and attempt our remote session now because we've got all the prerequisites in place. So we're going to go back to our web admin. We're going to go find this Android device, appropriately named 35A7011, blah, blah, blah. Right? In this case, because it's just satisfied the prerequisites, the open remote session did not show. So I'm refreshing the web page so that it shows me those options because I had just installed the quick support app in this case. So our open remote session is now there. And when we click on it, again, we're going to see the same behavior. Local admin opens this TeamViewer window that opens my local TeamViewer. So that's all the same on all the platforms. On the remote device, it's a little bit subtle. I'm going to back that up just a little bit. You get notification here. If you've got device in hand, it's a fairly significant ding from the device. But then you just get the little FileWave or a little notification that it wants to do a TeamViewer session, right? If we then open the notification, and we can't control that. That's just how the OS handles it. You'll see that a FileWave administrator wants to start a remote session. And if you click on that on the device, that opens the quick support app. First time in, you have to accept the EULA. And then it goes ahead and opens the support session, connects it with the partner device on the other side, right? As soon as we open TeamViewer on this side, because it has to be open on both. Right? And now we see on the Android side that it's prompting us. Do we want to allow remote support? And of course we do. We get a little bit different view, right? So this isn't as full featured on the Android side, but we do have the ability to text chat. There is the remote control part. You can take screenshots, but of course you just take a screenshot anyway since you're already viewing the screen. And there is a dashboard here, as well as some file transfers. So I don't remember if I did anything else in this particular demo with it, but we can click on it, we can navigate, type on it, etc., because we've got that that add-on installed, as well as the quick support app. All right, 2 more platforms to go. Let's talk about Chrome. Chrome's very interesting because it is something we're very glad to see, additional capabilities through FileWave to be able to manage. I'm casting my Chromebook here in this window, so we're going to look at a similar demo. Yeah, that annoying guy. So here we've got our Chromebook, right? You do have to be in the browser, and I will mention that in general with the management of the Chromebooks, the way that inventory extension works is it's a browser inventory extension, so the browser does have to be open on the device. But how does it work? Same way, basically. In the difference in the notification is that it's handled by the inventory extension. So again, if you're managing Chromebooks, you've probably already deployed the FileWave inventory extension because that's the thing that allows you to do geolocation lookups, gives you application data, current user information, all that stuff. This is, again, though, something that goes through Google for approval. We have submitted this for approval. We don't have approval yet. So as soon as we have that, it will automatically update because it just comes from the Google Store. But it's important to know that you need to have that piece. And there are also 2 other pieces, and they're identical to the Chromebook or to the Android device. And when I say identical, I mean actually identical because it's also the Google Play Store TeamViewer Quick Support app. So hurry up. Here we go. So the Quick Support app has to be installed. And then there is a Teamviewer Universal Add-on that you can try to use on Chromebooks. Hopefully your testing is a little better than ours. And again, the quick support gives you access to see the screen. The add-on gives you the ability to click on it. In our testing, we didn't find this universal add-on to work particularly well on the Chromebooks, but Teamviewer is aware of that, and I think they're working on coming up with an updated version of that might work a little bit better for us. Right? But once those are in place, right, and that's important, at least in this case with the other things, we can of course deploy things from FileWave. In the case of the applications for Chromebooks, we can't do that. So I think I show here in a second. Let me just move around here. Here we go. That I'm actually pushing those two things from my Google Admin Console to this device. So the Quick Support app and the Universal Add-on have already been pushed down to the device. So again, all the prerequisites are set for it, and it's got the new version of that FileWave inventory extension as well. Right? So we're all ready to do a session with that. How do we do it? Well, it's the same way that we initiated sessions for the others. Right? In this case, we'll do it from our native admin, same option for open remote session, same behavior again on the admin side, right? So it prompts about open Teamviewer, we'll say yes. On the destination device, it's a little bit different prompt, right? We get this prompt for doing quick support, and then you can remember that choice, of course. There's more clicks on the Chromebook side to start the session. It's a little more protected or annoying, depending on how you want to look at it. Once this session starts, because we haven't run the add-on before, it will ask us, do you want to do that add-on? So we have to approve that, and it's going to prompt us to allow the remote session, itself. Right here, we've got the enabling of the universal add-on. As I said, in my testing, that part of it wasn't so good, but the remote control or remote viewing part worked quite well. Right? And again, this is the same version actually as what's been deployed to the Android side. So it's a universal application. So we've turned the add-on on, and now we get our remote session here. And this looks, very similar to what we've got on the Android side, except there's one more prompt on the Chrome side where we have to come in and actually click the screen and then click share. So the user has to do several more things on the Chrome side. But what we end up with then is the remote control session to that device where we're seeing the device. We have the chat. In particular, I find the chat very helpful on all the platforms, and we can actually see what the user's doing on the remote device. Now, of course, you're in their context, so you can only do things that they can do, but from a support perspective, it's really, really helpful to be able to see that. All right, one more to go here, and then we're gonna talk about how we're doing on time. We have till 1:45, I think, so we're doing okay. Last one we're going to talk about in the Teamviewer space is the iPad. So let's talk about iPads. They're a little bit different. They're different in capability and different in prerequisites. So, well, maybe similar. So here's my iPad. So we're mirroring this up to my Mac. And we've got, you can see the quick support app's already installed. What do we need on this side? Well, this is where we need that new IPA for the FileWave Kiosk. So it's still the same web clip kiosk within that, but we need that new Kiosk IPA to be able to receive push notifications. That does not go to Apple for approval, but we do need to finish it. We're in just the final stages of that right now. All right, what am I talking about? Who knows? Right. So additionally, we need the Teamviewer Quick Support app to be deployed. That's easy peasy. Of course, if you're managing iPads, you're used to buying apps and then deploying them. You're going to buy that from Vpp like you would any other app. It is a free application, and then you can pre-deploy that. There is no add-on for the iPad side because it's remote viewing only on this platform. Right now, I have a fake application in place right here to receive the push notifications as we're waiting on that IPA, but it was enough to make it work for demo purposes while we wait on kind of the final solution there. And you'll see that now in the native admin, we can go and choose to open remote session. Same from the web admin. Okay. Does the same thing, launches the browser, says launch Teamviewer. So all of that's the same. We get that same behavior every time. So it's waiting on the partner. On the device side, it's a notification very much like Android. So you have to go into the notification and then click on it to launch that Quick Support app. Right, and that launches it with that particular session code, and then it will prompt to say allow remote support. Now there's an additional couple of steps here. It's going to tell us on the admin side that it supports screen sharing only, and then when we go back to the device, you'll see that we don't have a remote control yet. That's because you actually have to choose to broadcast from the device itself. So when we're back on the device here, when you click on that start broadcast, and you then pick the app that you want to use to broadcast. Now, as soon as I click OK to this, my AirPlay is going to go away, or I'm going to close my AirPlay here because you cannot have both running at the same time. So this is going to disappear for us here momentarily, but then you'll see that the remote observe session starts. So as soon as that broadcast starts, now we've got our remote session going, right? And we can do the chat here. So you'll see, I think I do a little demo of the chat in this one. Right, so we can send info over and then, of course, send it back. Right? And the main point being, again, that we can actually see what the person's doing. So we don't have to ask them to describe how they're using the iPad because we know how all of that works. So in a nutshell, in a very quick nutshell, that is everything TeamViewer in this part one in this technical preview. Now I'd like to give Matteo Ruella a chance, who's the PO for the web admin team. Matteo, would you like to add anything either on the TeamViewer side or on the web admin side?
Thanks, Tony. So, well, not really. I think you did a pretty complete explanation. I just want to share the internal excitement here for the feature, for the integration, for the partnership with TeamViewer, and then that we are really looking forward to get feedback on this technical preview. As Tony said, it's a preview. That means that we know we have something to adjust, but we need you. I mean, we need your feedback, and feel free to contact us to let us know what you would like to see, what doesn't work, what you like, so that we can then adjust the next releases. That would be all. Super.
Thank you for that. And I would also like to take the opportunity very quickly to introduce Dennis Prekrat. I always forget that. Everybody forgets that second R. Dennis Prekrat, who's just joined us as our product owner for the Windows product space. So he's dealing with Windows Classic and Windows MDM. Dennis, would you like to say hello?
Yes. Hi, everyone. So yes, thanks, Tony. As Tony said, I am the product owner for everything Windows related here, and yeah, we have a large backlog, very motivated team, and I'm sure that you will see in the coming releases many nice features related to the management of your Windows devices as well. And I'm also happy to hear any feedback that you have in regards to anything Windows related. So please shout out and let us know how you use the Windows devices, how you manage them, and if there is anything else that you would like to have in addition to what we already have in plans. Thanks.
All right, thank you so much, Dennis. Dennis is just with us about 3 weeks now, so he's about running the place at this point. He's really hit the ground running, so we're very glad to have Dennis on the team as well. So we're going to talk about roadmap here in a second, because we want to talk about the additional pieces that we're looking at in 14.7. But before we do that, I'm going to mention the Clever thing that I mentioned before. So Clever, we initially did an implementation, including Clever, when we, a long time ago, did our Engage product. As you know, since we're doing a demonstration of class spaces later, Engage really isn't around anymore. But that implementation with Clever is quite expensive. I don't want to say exactly how expensive, but if I said to you what we pay for it, you'd say, you pay how much now? So we're stopping that integration. There's about a couple of dozen customers that are still using that integration. No one's using it for Engage, but there are some that use it to feed Apple Classroom. So we'll be reaching out to you about helping you migrate that over to ASM instead to get the same roster information, but not have to have that paid for service kind of in the middle there. So we're targeting year end for end of that solution. We'll be reaching out in email to each of you that are using that now. So we'll try to give you some time and help you with that migration. So I did want to mention that. But while we're here, let's talk about 14.7. And I do want to mention product board. So this is in our current roadmap is in the knowledge base. I probably don't update it as much as I could. We have had some feedback. The folks have said, hey, it looks like you should be able to click on those things. And the answer to that is yes, you should be able to. And that's coming. That's a feature that's on its way from product board, which is interesting because we get to be the customer in this case and ask for new things. And so one of the things they're doing is coming up with a better way to interactively share this like we can with the kind of the feedback portal. But what are we looking at? This tool has really helped us in doing cross collaboration between the teams to know where there are dependencies on things and to help us with our planning. So we break this out into swim lanes. So 14.6, it's all yellow because it's all, basically done. We're just waiting to pull the trigger on starting the beta. But in our first swim lane here for Windows in 14.7, we're looking at 3 kind of significant things. One is software update reporting. So for those of you who manage the Windows side in particular, software updates is not something that I would call a strength, but we're trying to fix that, and we're trying to get here, which is doing Windows updates via Windows MDM and better capabilities for Windows Update in general from deploying them. Part of that is being able to report on them better. So the baby step into that is to add some significant reporting on software updates. Everything that we do today is based on what we're deploying, but for those of you, especially on the Windows side, know that there are more patches than what we have in that security update space. So we're looking at independent reporting here, both from a Windows MDM client and from the FileWave client natively. So we're looking for much stronger reporting on this to know things like how many patches are missing on a device, right? How many critical, how many important, etc. So some good summary information and some good status information in general. So we really hope that's going to be a big step forward. We're also adding in 14.7 the support for Windows 11 as a known version. Right now it won't show as Windows 11, and it's going to show, if you enroll a device, it's going to show as 10. Whatever the number is, I forget what it is. But we'll make that show like Windows 11, like we would on the Mac side with, say, Monterey, for instance. Also, we know for sure that Windows 11 is going to break our imaging solution, so that's something that's kind of out there hovering. And we have done some testing of the FileWave client with Windows 11. That has gone fairly well, but we know the imaging part is going to be problematic. Last thing on the Windows side is remote device control. In particular, we're talking about 2 things here. This is really more like commands than control. So don't think of that as remote control, but the ability to restart a device and the ability to wipe a device from restart is the main one that we want, is that reboot ability that you'd be able to right click on a device and choose reboot. So we're pretty excited about that change as well. On the Apple side, it's part 2 of the fall release. So the second half of that Vpp stuff that we talked about before, the actually making it the default API, and including the improvements to sync less and create less server load, et cetera, will come into that. These are in priority order. So this isn't an air quote promise that these things are coming in 14.7, but these are the things that we're working on, and in what order in each of the teams. So that VPP protocol, we need to wrap that up. And then additional MDM management for macOS. There's 2 things that we weren't able to do that we would like to have done in this first iteration, which is recovery lock support for the M1 devices, and then clean the OS and knock it back to a out-of-box experience, kind of like the iOS devices. So those 2 things are in this particular request. These 2 are just kind of placeholders that we always have for things that come in from the field that we need to fix, and we always have to update the imaging appliances on every release. The last thing in this section I want to mention is related to a new team that we have. And when I said before that the organization has grown, we've built some custom teams to help with certain areas of the product. And our new software architecture team is particularly interested in things that won't be of any interest to you feature set wise, but are kind of the underpinnings of the entire application. So they've got some things that they want to do in this iteration with database maintenance to make the solution, I think we've done a pretty good job of making it more reliable here over the past 8 to 10 months, but they want to obviously do a lot more. So this is a start here on the database side, some normalization there. On the Google side, I'm not going to talk about each of these pieces. Some of them, like moving the Google features into the web admin, are just generally good. But the feature here that's really adding something is this Android device user authentication. So right now, when you enroll an Android device, and you probably saw earlier in my demo when I referenced that Android device is 317, blah, blah, blah. There's really no good way to know who a device belongs to. So we're adding authentication as a part of user enrollment when you first set up your device, so that you can actually tie a device to a person and then know who has it, and then be able to uniquely identify it. We think that's a really big thing on the Android side. On the web side, the main thing that we're working at, almost 95% of the effort, is the second part of the Teamviewer setup, which is unattended access. So doing the same thing that we just did, except it doesn't prompt the user for the session, it just starts the session. So we're working on that, and we're starting all of these things in this coming week. So those are all the things that we're looking at in 14.7. And I guess that's just about it. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my share here. And I think we're just about on time as well, maybe like 2 minutes early. But that gives us a good segue to head right over into our Ask Me Anything session. And I don't remember if there's a break in between. No break. Okay.
No, there's no break.
The AMA.
All right, so let me hand the mic over. So I'm still going to participate in the AMA, but thank goodness I'm not going to drive it. So let me hand the mic over here to Josh Lewitsky, our Global Head of Professional Services.
Hey, everybody. Let me share my desktop just because that'll be easy when people ask questions.